Silent confidence versus loud aggression is not just a contrast of personalities, it is a clash of strategies, and only one of them actually works in the real world. Loud aggression is easy. It requires no discipline, no foresight, no control. Anyone can raise their voice, puff their chest, or shove another person when emotions run high. That's why bullies rely on it. Noise creates the illusion of power. It fills space, overwhelms weaker minds, and pressures bystanders into submission. But silent confidence does something far more dangerous. It refuses to play the bully's game. When someone remains composed in the face of provocation, it destabilizes the aggressor. The bully expects fear, anger, or submission. When none of those appear, the script breaks. Silence forces the aggressor to confront uncertainty, and uncertainty is terrifying to someone whose authority depends entirely on control. Silent confidence communicates strength without display. It signals preparation without bragging. The body language is subtle but unmistakable. Balanced posture, steady breathing, eyes that observe rather than dart. This kind of confidence doesn't demand attention, yet it draws it anyway. People notice when someone doesn't flinch. Loud aggression tries to dominate the environment. Silent confidence dominates the moment. One relies on intimidation, the other on certainty. The bully shouts because they are unsure. The calm individual stays quiet because they don't need reassurance. That imbalance is what flips the power dynamic. The louder the aggressor becomes, the more they reveal their insecurity. The quieter the confident person remains, the more dangerous they appear. In social settings, especially public ones, loud aggression often has a short lifespan. It burns hot and fast. It attracts attention, witnesses, and eventually consequences. Silent confidence, on the other hand, blends into the environment while maintaining full awareness. It doesn't escalate unless necessary. This restraint is what separates real strength from performative dominance. People who are truly capable rarely advertise it. They understand that control is more valuable than intimidation. When conflict arises, the calm individual has already measured distance, assessed exits, and read intent. The aggressor is improvising. Improvisation under emotion leads to mistakes. Silent confidence waits for those mistakes. The psychological impact on observers is just as important. Bystanders instinctively align with stability. Loud aggression makes people uncomfortable. It signals danger and unpredictability. Silent confidence signals control and safety. Even without words, the room begins to shift. Attention drifts away from the aggressor and toward the calm presence. The bully feels this shift immediately. Their voice gets sharper, their movements more exaggerated. They are trying to reclaim the spotlight they are losing. This escalation only accelerates their loss of authority. The calm individual doesn't need validation from the crowd. The bully depends on it. That dependency is weakness. Silent confidence also protects the individual legally and socially. When things are later reviewed, witnesses remember who stayed composed and who lost control. Calm behavior reads as credibility, aggression reads as guilt. Even if force becomes necessary, the one who remained controlled beforehand is seen as reactive, not instigative. Loud aggression leaves no such protection. It paints a clear picture of intent. This is why discipline-focused training emphasizes restraint first. The goal is not to dominate, but to neutralize, not to win attention, but to end the threat. Silent confidence aligns perfectly with that philosophy. The bully often mistakes silence for weakness. That miscalculation is the most dangerous error they make. Silence is not absence, it is containment. It means energy is stored, not wasted. Loud aggression leaks energy with every word, every gesture. By the time action occurs, the aggressor is already depleted. The silent individual is fresh, focused, and precise. Precision beats force every time. This is why calm individuals appear faster when they finally move. They are not rushing, they are executing. The contrast shocks everyone watching, especially the aggressor who never saw it coming. Silent confidence is learned, not inherited. It comes from preparation, repetition, and self-awareness. It requires the ability to regulate emotion under pressure. That alone puts someone ahead of most people. Loud aggression is usually a default response, triggered when someone feels threatened or exposed. It is reactive. Silent confidence is proactive. It anticipates pressure and plans for it. That planning doesn't require visible movement. It happens internally. The mind stays ahead of the situation while the body remains still. This gap between internal readiness and external calm is what creates intimidation without noise. The psychology of intimidation reveals why bullies behave the way they do and why their tactics fail against disciplined resistance. Intimidation is not about strength. It is about perceived vulnerability. Bullies scan for reactions. They look for hesitation, avoidance, emotional leakage, a flinch, a raised voice, a defensive posture. All of these signal that intimidation is working. Once confirmed, the bully escalates. They are not trying to fight, they are trying to control. Control validates their identity. Without it, they feel exposed. This is why intimidation relies so heavily on spectacle. The performance is meant to overwhelm the target before logic can engage. Fear is the currency of intimidation. The bully invests pressure and expects fear in return. When fear is absent, the investment fails. The bully experiences cognitive dissonance. Their behavior no longer produces the expected outcome. This triggers frustration, then anger, then reckless escalation. The bully's mind starts racing, trying to reassert dominance. They may insult, invade personal space, or provoke physically. Each step is an attempt to force a reaction that confirms their power. When the reaction still doesn't come, the bully's internal narrative collapses. They are no longer the one in control. That realization is destabilizing. Intimidation also depends on hierarchy. Bullies position themselves as higher status by being louder, larger, or more socially connected. They rely on the assumption that others will accept this hierarchy without challenge. Silent confidence challenges it without confrontation. By refusing to submit emotionally, the target implicitly rejects the bully's claimed status. This rejection is perceived as disrespect. For someone whose identity depends on dominance, perceived disrespect is intolerable. The bully then feels compelled to punish the target to restore their imagined hierarchy. This is where they make critical mistakes, especially in public settings where witnesses matter. Another key element of intimidation psychology is projection. Bullies project their own insecurities onto others. They accuse targets of being weak, scared, or insignificant because those are the fears they carry themselves. Loud aggression is a mask. It hides self-doubt behind volume. When someone stands calmly in front of that mask, the bully feels seen, not understood, but exposed. This exposure intensifies their behavior. They may become more personal, more cruel, or more physical. Each escalation is less strategic and more emotional. Strategy requires calm. Emotion destroys it. Intimidation works best in isolation. Bullies prefer environments where targets feel alone or unsupported. When others are present, intimidation must be faster and louder to be effective. This urgency increases error. Silent confidence leverages the presence of others without appealing to them. It doesn't ask for help or validation, it simply exists. Observers subconsciously register this as strength. The bully senses the shift. Their usual tools are failing, and the audience is no longer fully on their side. This loss of social dominance is often more painful than physical resistance. The bully's greatest fear is loss of control, not physical harm. That is why intimidation precedes violence. Violence is risky. It carries consequences. Intimidation is supposed to prevent the need for it. When intimidation fails, the bully faces a dilemma: back down and lose status, or escalate and risk punishment. Many choose escalation because their identity cannot survive retreat. This decision is emotional, not rational. The calm individual, having never escalated emotionally, remains rational throughout. That difference determines the outcome. Understanding the psychology of intimidation removes its power. Once you recognize that aggression is a signal of insecurity rather than strength, the behavior becomes predictable. Predictability removes fear. When fear is gone, intimidation collapses. The bully becomes just another person making noise, burning energy, and revealing weakness with every move. The calm individual doesn't need to defeat the bully psychologically. The bully does that to themselves. All that remains is maintaining control and readiness as the situation unfolds, moment by moment, without surrendering emotional ground. Why staying calm is a tactical advantage becomes clear the moment pressure enters the environment. Calmness is not passive, and it is not accidental. It is an active state of control where the mind processes faster because it is not hijacked by emotion. When stress spikes, most people experience narrowed vision, rushed decisions, and poor timing. Staying calm prevents that collapse. It keeps perception wide and accurate. Breathing remains steady, muscles stay loose but responsive, and the mind remains capable of sequencing actions instead of reacting blindly. In any confrontation, the person who can think clearly has already won half the battle. Calmness preserves options. Panic destroys them. And calm allows time to stretch. While an aggressor feels rushed by emotion, the calm individual experiences moments more slowly. This difference is critical. It creates space to observe details others miss, shifts in posture, changes in tone, the movement of hands, the distance between bodies. These details inform decision-making. The calm person is not guessing, they are reading. This reading process happens continuously, without urgency. When action is required, it is based on information, not impulse. Impulse is predictable. Information is power. Emotion consumes energy. Anger tightens muscles, accelerates breathing, and narrows focus. Fear does the same in a different direction. Calmness conserves energy. The body remains efficient, ready to move without resistance. This efficiency translates directly into speed and accuracy. A calm movement is faster than a rushed one because it does not fight itself. Muscles engage only as needed. There is no excess tension. This is why trained individuals appear effortless even under pressure. They are not calm because nothing is happening. They are calm because they are trained to function while it is happening. Calmness also communicates dominance without provocation. In high-pressure situations, people instinctively look for cues on how to react. A calm presence becomes an anchor. Others unconsciously synchronize with it. This shifts the emotional tone of the environment. The aggressor feels this shift immediately. Their attempts to provoke fall flat. Without emotional feedback, their actions feel pointless. This erodes confidence. Calmness does not need to assert itself. It simply exists, and its presence forces others to adjust. Another advantage of staying calm is precision in communication. When words are necessary, they land with clarity. Calm speech is measured, direct, and difficult to dismiss. It lacks the volatility that invites argument. Aggressive speech invites escalation. Calm speech sets boundaries. It does not explain or justify. It states. This simplicity frustrates those who rely on chaos to dominate. They cannot twist or overwhelm what is not emotionally charged. Calmness limits manipulation. Calmness also reduces errors. Under stress, the brain defaults to habit. If habits are poor, performance degrades rapidly. Staying calm allows access to trained responses instead of reflexive ones. This is especially important in environments where mistakes carry consequences. A calm individual can stop, reassess, and choose a better option even mid-action. An emotional individual cannot. They commit fully to flawed decisions because their nervous system demands release. Calmness resists that demand. Remaining calm does not mean tolerating disrespect indefinitely. It means choosing the moment of response. Timing is everything. Acting too early escalates unnecessarily. Acting too late risks vulnerability. Calmness sharpens timing. It allows the individual to wait until action is justified and effective. When that moment arrives, the response is decisive. There is no hesitation because the decision has already been made internally. The action is simply the execution of a conclusion reached in calm observation. Calmness also protects reputation. In any situation that involves witnesses, perception matters. People remember who stayed composed. They remember who lost control. Calmness aligns perception with credibility. Even if force becomes necessary, it is seen as controlled and justified. Emotional reactions are remembered as aggression. This distinction affects outcomes long after the moment has passed. Staying calm is not only about winning the immediate encounter, it is about surviving the aftermath intact. Reading the room before trouble starts is a skill that separates those who react from those who prevent. Most conflicts do not begin suddenly. They build through subtle signals that go unnoticed by distracted minds. Reading the room means observing without being obvious, noticing patterns without staring, and sensing shifts in energy before they become actions. This awareness is quiet and constant. It does not interfere with normal behavior. It runs in the background, gathering data. Every environment has a rhythm. People move, speak, and interact in predictable ways. When that rhythm changes, it signals potential disruption. A sudden pause in conversation, a shift in body orientation, an increase in volume or proximity, these are indicators. Reading the room means catching these indicators early. Early detection allows early adjustment. A slight change in position, a different route, a pause in movement can neutralize threats before they form. Reading the room also involves identifying key individuals. Not everyone matters equally in a given space. Some people influence others. Some carry tension. Some seek attention. Recognizing these roles helps prioritize awareness. A calm observer notes who is watching, who is reacting, and who is posturing. This is not judgment, it is assessment. Assessment informs positioning. Positioning influences outcome. Spatial awareness is central to reading the room. Distance, angles, and obstacles determine options. A person who knows where exits are, where crowds thin, and where visibility is limited has more control. This knowledge does not require paranoia. It requires habit. Once ingrained, it becomes effortless. The body naturally chooses safer paths and better positions. This reduces exposure without conscious effort. Tone matters as much as movement. Changes in voice, laughter that feels forced, silence that lingers too long, all communicate intent. Reading the room means listening beyond words. It means noticing when humor turns sharp or when attention becomes focused. These moments often precede confrontation. Recognizing them allows disengagement or preparation. Ignoring them invites surprise. Reading the room also includes self-awareness. How one's own presence affects the environment matters. Posture, eye contact, and movement send signals. A composed presence discourages opportunistic behavior. A distracted or insecure presence attracts it. Reading the room includes adjusting oneself to minimize risk. This is not about shrinking, it is about aligning presence with confidence and control. Social dynamics play a role as well. Groups behave differently than individuals. Energy amplifies, accountability diffuses. Reading the room means understanding how group behavior escalates and when it cools. It means recognizing when someone is performing for others versus acting independently. This distinction matters. Performative aggression thrives on audience reaction. Removing that reaction often deflates it. Reading the room is not about predicting every outcome. It is about reducing uncertainty. Each observed detail narrows the range of possible scenarios. This makes response easier if needed. When the unexpected happens, it is not shocking. It is simply another variable within a familiar pattern. Familiarity breeds calm. Calm enables control. Those who fail to read the room often believe conflict comes out of nowhere. It rarely does. The signs were present. They were just ignored. Reading the room turns those signs into signals. Signals become choices. Choices prevent problems or prepare solutions. This skill compounds over time. The more it is practiced, the less conscious effort it requires. Eventually, awareness becomes instinctive, and environments reveal themselves without effort. The moment the power dynamic shifts is rarely loud and almost never obvious to the people who expect dominance to be announced. Power does not change hands when someone shouts the loudest or throws the first threat. It shifts internally first, long before any visible action occurs. The shift begins when one person realizes they are no longer controlling the emotional direction of the interaction. The instant an aggressor notices that their words are not landing, that their presence is not intimidating, something fractures in their confidence. This fracture is subtle, but it spreads fast. Their posture tightens, their movements become exaggerated, their tone sharpens. These are not signs of strength, they are signs of loss. The power dynamic shifts when expectation fails. An aggressor enters an interaction with a script. That script assumes fear, submission, or retaliation. Each outcome feeds their sense of authority. When none of these appear, the script collapses. The aggressor is forced to improvise, and improvisation under emotional pressure leads to mistakes. Meanwhile, the calm individual is not improvising. They are observing. Observation creates leverage. Leverage changes dynamics. The person who sees clearly while the other scrambles gains control without ever reaching for it. This shift is often invisible to bystanders at first. On the surface, the aggressor may still appear dominant. They may be louder, larger, or surrounded by allies, but internally, the balance has already tipped. The calm individual has stopped reacting and started dictating the pace through inaction. Every second without a reaction deepens the aggressor's uncertainty. Silence becomes pressure. Stillness becomes resistance. The aggressor feels time stretching against them, forcing a decision they are not ready to make. Once the shift begins, the aggressor's behavior becomes more erratic. They may repeat themselves, escalate insults, or invade personal space. These are attempts to reassert control through intensity. Intensity without direction exposes vulnerability. The calm individual senses this exposure and adjusts accordingly, often by doing even less. This restraint amplifies the imbalance. The aggressor is working harder for diminishing returns. Effort increases, results decrease. This mismatch is the clearest indicator that power has shifted. The moment the power dynamic shifts is also when consequences become inevitable. The aggressor must either retreat or escalate physically. Retreat threatens their identity. Escalation risks punishment. The calm individual has no such dilemma. They have maintained composure and credibility. Any action they take from this point forward is framed as response, not initiation. This framing matters. It influences witnesses, authority figures, and even the aggressor's allies. Control of narrative follows control of emotion. Power shifts fully when the aggressor realizes they are being evaluated rather than feared. Evaluation strips dominance. It turns the aggressor into an object of observation instead of an agent of control. This realization often triggers anger or panic. The aggressor feels exposed, as though a spotlight is turned on them. Their actions become defensive rather than assertive. The calm individual remains centered, allowing this unraveling to continue without interference. At this stage, even small movements carry weight. A slight adjustment in stance, a measured glance, a controlled breath. These actions communicate readiness without threat. They signal capability without invitation. The aggressor reads these signals subconsciously and hesitates. Hesitation is the final confirmation of the shift. The person who hesitates has already lost initiative. Initiative is power. Without it, dominance is an illusion. The shift also affects the surrounding environment. Bystanders sense the change even if they cannot articulate it. Attention subtly realigns, whispers quiet, movement slows, the space feels different. This collective awareness reinforces the shift. The aggressor feels the room no longer supports them. The calm individual feels no need for support. This asymmetry finalizes the reversal. Power has moved, and it did so without force. When silence becomes a warning marks the point where inaction communicates more than words ever could. Silence is often misunderstood as weakness, but in controlled individuals it is deliberate. It is a signal that evaluation is ongoing and that options remain open. This type of silence is not empty, it is loaded. It tells the other person that escalation will not produce the reaction they seek and that consequences, if triggered, will be precise. Silence becomes a warning when it is paired with presence. Presence is what gives silence weight. Without presence, silence can be ignored. With presence, it becomes impossible to dismiss. Presence is conveyed through posture, eye contact, and stillness. There is no tension, no agitation, just readiness. This readiness is unsettling because it lacks emotion. Emotion provides predictability, calm presence removes it. The warning in silence is not a threat. Threats invite challenges, silence closes doors. It offers no hooks for argument or manipulation. The aggressor has nothing to push against except their own uncertainty. Each attempt to provoke meets the same response, nothing. This consistency forces the aggressor to confront the reality that their usual tools are ineffective. Ineffectiveness breeds frustration. Frustration accelerates mistakes. Silence also shifts responsibility. When words stop, action becomes a choice rather than a reaction. The aggressor can no longer claim provocation. Any further escalation is clearly their decision. This clarity is dangerous for someone operating on impulse. The calm individual understands this and allows the silence to do the work. There is no need to explain or justify. The absence of explanation implies confidence. A silent warning is most powerful when it is maintained under pressure. As insults intensify or space is invaded, maintaining silence requires discipline. That discipline is visible. It communicates control over self, which implies control over situation. The aggressor senses this and begins to doubt their advantage. Doubt slows action. Slowed action creates opportunity for the calm individual. Silence also protects the calm individual from emotional contamination. Words can entangle. Arguments pull people into reactive cycles. Silence breaks those cycles. It keeps the calm individual centered while the aggressor spirals. This asymmetry widens with every second. The aggressor becomes louder, more desperate. The calm individual remains unchanged. The contrast becomes stark. In many cases, silence ends the confrontation without further action. The aggressor withdraws, unwilling to escalate without emotional leverage. In other cases, escalation occurs despite the warning. When that happens, the calm individual is already prepared. The silence was not hesitation, it was assessment. The response, when it comes, is decisive because it was chosen, not forced. Silence as a warning also reshapes how others interpret the event. Witnesses remember the quiet restraint. They remember the opportunities given for de-escalation. This memory frames any subsequent action as justified. The aggressor loses narrative control. Their story collapses under scrutiny because their behavior was excessive in contrast to the calm response. The effectiveness of silence lies in its refusal to compete. It does not try to overpower or outshout. It waits. Waiting is a luxury of control. Only those who feel secure can afford it. That security is felt by everyone present. It changes the temperature of the interaction. It signals that escalation will not be chaotic, emotional, or prolonged. It will be brief and contained. This understanding settles into the space, altering behavior without a single word being spoken. Why bullies escalate when they lose control is rooted in panic, not confidence. A bully's authority exists only as long as others react the way they expect. When fear, submission, or emotional engagement disappear, the bully experiences a sudden loss of identity. Their dominance was never internal. It was borrowed from reactions. When those reactions stop, the bully feels exposed. That exposure triggers escalation. Louder insults, closer proximity, harsher threats are not signs of increasing power, but desperate attempts to reclaim it. Escalation is the bully's last tool when manipulation fails. At that point, logic is gone. Pride takes over. The bully is no longer thinking about consequences, only about restoring the image they believe they are losing. This is why escalation often looks reckless and excessive. It is emotional compensation for collapsing control. The bully is not trying to win anymore. They are trying not to lose in front of others. Each step forward is driven by fear of humiliation rather than confidence in strength. Discipline over impulse is what prevents that collapse from happening on the other side. Discipline means emotional regulation under pressure. It means refusing to let external chaos dictate internal response. Impulse seeks release. Discipline seeks resolution. An impulsive reaction feels satisfying in the moment, but creates long-term damage. Discipline delays gratification in favor of control. It allows a person to remain strategic while others unravel. Where impulse narrows vision, discipline expands it. Where impulse rushes action, discipline refines timing. This difference is decisive. Discipline keeps movements efficient, words minimal, and intent clear. It creates predictability for the disciplined individual and unpredictability for the aggressor. That imbalance favors control. Discipline does not remove emotion, it governs it. Emotion becomes fuel instead of fire. The disciplined person chooses when and how to act, not because they are forced, but because they are ready. One move, one decision, no excess, reflects the principle that effectiveness comes from restraint. When action becomes necessary, it should be decisive, contained, and final. Excess movement wastes energy and creates openings. Excess force creates consequences. A single, well-chosen action ends uncertainty and prevents escalation. This approach is rooted in clarity. The decision is made before the movement begins, leaving no hesitation once execution starts. Precision replaces chaos. The absence of excess communicates control. It shows that the action was not emotional, but intentional. Observers recognize this immediately. The difference between losing control and asserting it lies in how much is done, not how much is shown. Doing less with certainty is more powerful than doing more with desperation. Why respect appears instantly after control lies in how humans interpret stability. People gravitate toward those who demonstrate composure under pressure. Control signals reliability, safety, and authority. When someone handles a volatile moment without unnecessary aggression, it reshapes perception. Respect is not demanded. It is granted by observers who recognize restraint as strength. Once control is displayed, doubt disappears. Others adjust their behavior accordingly. The environment recalibrates around the individual who maintains discipline. Respect emerges not from fear, but from trust in that person's ability to handle conflict without chaos. Authority responds when evidence is clear, because institutions are built to act on observable behavior, not emotion or reputation. Authority figures do not operate on assumptions, they operate on patterns, consistency, and credibility. When a situation escalates, the first question authority asks is not who is strongest, loudest, or most popular, but who maintained control. Clear evidence is created long before authority arrives. It is built through posture, tone, restraint, and the sequence of actions that lead to the outcome. The individual who remains composed establishes a timeline that favors them. Every moment of calm behavior becomes a data point. Every attempt at de-escalation becomes context. By the time authority steps in, the narrative has already formed. Clear evidence is not about perfection, it is about contrast. When one party escalates emotionally while the other remains steady, the contrast becomes undeniable. Authority reads this contrast immediately. It simplifies decision-making. Instead of sorting through conflicting stories, authority observes behavioral consistency. Calm individuals tend to give concise, factual accounts. Aggressive individuals tend to justify, exaggerate, or deflect. These differences are not subtle. They are deeply ingrained responses under stress. Authority recognizes them because they see them repeatedly. Calmness aligns with credibility. Emotional volatility raises questions. Evidence also includes witness perception. Witnesses rarely remember exact words, but they remember demeanor. They remember who looked in control and who appeared out of control. They remember who tried to walk away and who pursued. They remember who escalated first. Authority weighs these impressions heavily because they reflect collective observation rather than individual bias. When multiple witnesses independently describe the same pattern, authority does not hesitate. Clarity accelerates response. Authority responds fastest when boundaries are crossed visibly. Physical aggression, invasion of space, or threats are concrete actions that leave little room for interpretation. When these actions occur after a period of restraint from the other party, the sequence becomes critical. The restrained individual is seen as patient. The aggressor is seen as deliberate. Authority does not need to speculate about intent. Intent is inferred from behavior. This is why disciplined restraint before action is so powerful. It establishes intent without words. Clear evidence also protects against retaliation narratives. When someone reacts impulsively, authority must untangle mutual blame. When someone responds only after being provoked and does so with minimal force, authority sees proportion. Proportion matters. Excess creates doubt. Precision removes it. Authority is trained to assess proportional response. A controlled reaction that ends the conflict without extending it signals discipline. Discipline aligns with institutional values. Chaos does not. Another factor authority considers is aftermath behavior. How an individual behaves immediately after a confrontation reveals their mindset. Calm individuals disengage. They do not boast, pursue, or justify. They stabilize. Aggressive individuals often continue posturing, arguing, or seeking validation. This behavior reinforces authority's initial assessment. The situation does not end when the action ends. Authority evaluates the entire arc, from onset to resolution. Authority also responds to patterns over time. Individuals who consistently display control are given the benefit of the doubt. Those with a history of disruption are scrutinized. Each interaction contributes to an informal record. Even when no formal documentation exists, reputations form. Discipline builds trust. Trust influences response speed and severity. When authority trusts an individual's judgment, they intervene decisively on their behalf. Clear evidence removes ambiguity, and ambiguity is the enemy of action. Authority hesitates when facts are unclear. Hesitation allows problems to linger. Clear evidence forces resolution. It simplifies the decision tree. Authority does not need to negotiate or mediate when one party's behavior clearly violates boundaries. Enforcement becomes straightforward. This protects the disciplined individual from prolonged scrutiny and secondary consequences. Authority is also sensitive to optics. Public spaces amplify the importance of visible restraint. When many people are watching, authority must consider the message their response sends. Supporting discipline reinforces norms. Allowing aggression to stand undermines them. Clear evidence allows authority to act confidently without fear of backlash. The decision appears justified because it is. The disciplined individual does not need to appeal to authority emotionally. They do not need to dramatize or demand. Their behavior has already spoken. When authority arrives, the situation is already framed. The disciplined individual simply exists within that frame. Authority steps into a story that is already clear. The response follows naturally. The lesson everyone misses is that power is not proven in moments of explosion, but in the long stretches of restraint that precede them. Most people focus on the visible outcome, the confrontation, the decisive action, the turning point. They miss the invisible work that made that moment inevitable. The quiet assessments, the controlled breathing, the deliberate choices not to react. These are the foundations of real power. Without them, any visible display is hollow. People are conditioned to associate power with dominance. Dominance is loud, visible, and immediate. It demands attention, but dominance is fragile. It depends on constant reinforcement. The moment it is challenged, it must escalate or collapse. Real power does not need reinforcement. It exists independently of recognition. It is internal. It does not rise or fall with public opinion. This is why disciplined individuals appear unmoved by provocation. Their power does not come from the interaction, it comes from preparation. Another missed lesson is that restraint is not hesitation, it is choice. Hesitation is uncertainty. Restraint is confidence in timing. The two look similar to untrained eyes, but they are opposites. Hesitation delays action because the mind is unsure. Restraint delays action because the mind is certain it is not yet necessary. This distinction determines outcomes. Those who confuse restraint for weakness miscalculate. They assume the absence of action means absence of capability. This assumption leads to irreversible mistakes. People also miss how much energy is conserved through discipline. Emotional reactions drain resources quickly. Anger tightens the body, narrows perception, and accelerates fatigue. Fear does the same. Discipline keeps the system efficient. Energy remains available when it is needed most. This efficiency creates the illusion of effortlessness. Observers often describe disciplined individuals as calm or natural, without realizing the depth of training required to achieve that state under pressure. Another overlooked lesson is the role of self-respect. Disciplined restraint is rooted in self-respect. It refuses to allow external behavior to dictate internal standards. The disciplined individual does not need to prove worth through reaction. Their worth is not negotiable. This internal boundary prevents manipulation. Provocation loses its leverage when it cannot access insecurity. The aggressor senses this and becomes frustrated. Frustration leads to errors. Many also miss that power is cumulative. Each controlled response reinforces the next. Discipline compounds. Over time, it becomes identity. Others begin to anticipate control from that individual. Expectations shift. Challenges decrease, not because the individual is feared, but because they are understood. People instinctively avoid creating conflict with those who are known to handle it well. This is long-term power, not momentary dominance. The lesson extends beyond confrontation. Discipline shapes leadership, credibility, and influence. People trust those who do not react impulsively. They follow those who remain steady under pressure. In chaotic environments, stability becomes magnetic. Others orient around it. This influence is subtle but pervasive. It does not require authority or force. It emerges naturally. Another missed lesson is that discipline protects the individual from regret. Impulsive actions often carry lasting consequences. Words cannot be unsaid. Actions cannot be undone. Discipline reduces regret by aligning action with values rather than emotion. When disciplined individuals look back on confrontations, they do not question their choices. They acted with intention. This internal peace is a form of power rarely acknowledged. People also underestimate how discipline disrupts toxic dynamics. Aggression thrives on reaction. Drama feeds on engagement. Discipline starves both. By refusing to participate emotionally, the disciplined individual removes the fuel. Toxic behavior cannot sustain itself without reinforcement. It either escalates destructively or collapses. Either outcome exposes it. Discipline accelerates this exposure. The final missed lesson is that power is quiet because it does not need witnesses. It does not perform. It does not announce. It simply operates. When action occurs, it is brief and sufficient. When silence occurs, it is deliberate and weighted. Everything serves a purpose. Nothing is wasted. This economy of behavior is what makes discipline so effective and so rare. Most people chase the appearance of strength. Few invest in the substance. Those who do never need to explain themselves. If this story made you pause, that's not an accident. On A1 Storyteller, we don't glorify chaos, we expose it. We show how discipline outlasts aggression, how control rewrites outcomes, and why the quietest presence often carries the most power. If you believe strength isn't about volume but about restraint, subscribe now. That tells the algorithm this kind of storytelling matters, and it helps this channel reach people who need these lessons before they learn them the hard way. Tap like if you recognize the moment when the power shifted. Comment if you've ever seen calm dismantle intimidation in real life. And stay here, the next story is already waiting, and it goes deeper.